Hi, everybody. My name is Angie Peacock. I'm a psychiatric drug withdrawal consultant and a healing coach. Thank you for joining us today. If you are on YouTube, will you please hit subscribe? If you're on Facebook, will you please like the page? Thank you so much. Today, I'm bringing you Ziza Kirk. She is a caregiver of someone in psychiatric drug withdrawal, benzos, and other things. So we will hear that story in just a minute. But welcome, Ziza.
Thank you.
So nice to have you. Let me read her bio really quick so you all know who we're talking to. Ziza is 45 years old and passionate about bringing awareness about the dangers of benzodiazepines. Ziza has been married for 23 years and has three beautiful daughters and a rambunctious grandson. The past 2 years, she's been caring for her husband in benzo withdrawal and has seen firsthand how life-altering and devastating the effects of these medications can be. We're going to talk about that today. So Ziza, let me just start out with just tell us about like what was life like before benzos for you and Kevin.
Well, Kevin and I, once we got married, we quickly figured out that we like to travel. I'm from Brazil, and he went to Brazil with me a couple of times before we had kids. And later, during that time, doing those travels to Brazil, we kind of tried scuba diving. And that put us in a complete level of, oh my gosh, we're going to stop everything we're doing. We're going to scuba dive. We're going to travel everywhere. We love it. So, of course, coming back from one of those trips, I was pregnant. And we had to wait a little while before we could start, traveling like we wanted to. Once we started the traveling and the scuba diving, we were absolutely in love with traveling. We love doing scuba diving together. We had to learn the skills and all of that we did together. We did the training for scuba together. We loved the traveling because that meant we spent time together. As a couple, we didn't have the kids with us. It was a time for just us in our relationship, and that was amazing for us. We loved doing that. It was special. We look forward to it every year. Sometimes we'd be lucky and do it twice a year, but mostly it was just once a year. We would do a trip where we would be scuba diving, and we have our little dating and our special moment. It was amazing. So of course, the stressors of life and work kind of demanded more of Kevin, and I was still staying at home with the kids for the beginning of our children's school age, and then it became to where it was just not allowing as much time for us to do that. But we always try to sneak and get some of our travel in. But scuba diving was a big thing for us because we did that together. It didn't necessarily have to be a big trip overseas or anything like that, but it allowed us to even, somewhere here in the country, do something related to that, either events or a quick trip to a quarry, and things like that. And that was something that him and I identify ourselves with as the scuba divers. That's what we pride ourselves in doing. That is a lot of adrenaline. It's fun. There's a lot of skill to it, and it's cool.
Yeah.
And so one of the times that he became changed to a different job, it was very stressful, and he was very, very demanding, just like anybody else. We was seeking advice from a professional on, is there something that can help with this? And that's when we started the whole journey with, stimulants or, prescribed benzodiazepines for your anxiety and stressors of, daily stressors. So that's where we started. We started with a life where we were constantly, going, doing fun things, going everywhere. Both Kevin and I are very outspoken. We like to be around people. We like to communicate. And so for him, it was supposed to be like a added bonus to his personality, to his ability to do these things. So we started there. We started with all this, the life being like this, our kids getting a little, older in school, and having to kind of adapt to all that. Then when that came in the picture, the whole stimulant or the whole, benzodiazepines, it was kind of supposed to be an add-on, to be able to continue doing life like we were doing in a way that we could manage. And he was, was doing all the things that he was wanting to do. He kind of stepped up the level of skill in his scuba diving career per se, where it was more technical, is more involved, more difficult. So that's when I started noticing the effects of that, in a sense of the obsession, or the where he was more worried about keeping up with his prescribed schedule, when he needed to take, when he didn't need to take, or oh my gosh, am I going to be out of it,
Wow.
if I'm not sure. So that was a little taste
Or the
of what
first,
that.
like the
Mhm.
first inkling that something was happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what led to his eventual coming off the meds? Like, what did you notice, or what decision did he make on his
Well, the
part?
biggest thing was, instead of the medication being prescribed to help with anxiety, it was actually causing him anxiety. He was
How did you know
actually,
that? How did you figure that out?
well, just because Kevin was very much a adrenaline junkie. Anxiety was never in his vocabulary,
Mm-mm.
or even a panic attack. One day, out of the blue, he's taking a shower, and all of a sudden he's looks at me, just complete fear, and says, "I'm dying. I'm gonna have a heart attack." And that was the most foreign concept for us. Is what, a heart
Mm-hmm.
attack? You're scared. Kevin and scared was a complete good match, like
Well,
water and
and
oil.
we didn't say that part, but Kevin was in the military for how many years, and what is his
And
job? Like, talk
and then,
about the rest.
well,
Besides,
as he was in the Air Force as pararescue, one of the most high adrenaline jobs that you could possibly think of, in the military.
mm-hmm.
Anything and everything that was motorized, anything that normally a person would be stressed over. So, for example, if there was a car wreck on the road and the police cars and there's a scene, I'm in panic. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so anxious. And he'd be completely in control, completely chilled over everything, as opposed to me and a normal person would be stressed over it.
Yeah, yeah,
So that was when I started noticing that is so that anxiety started creeping in a little bit more and more on different situations, and I started noticing that's weird while taking the medication.
yeah.
So that is when the anxiety, we started noticing, he started noticing, it was like, this medication that I'm taking is not helping. The doctor tried to increase it, or say, we need to change this to this, we need to add this to it too, we need to increase your dose or increase the frequency. And it was completely not making anything better, not making the anxiety better, not making the different fears that the other medications brought on better. And we decided that he needed to be off of it. So he asked the
Mm-hmm.
doctor to be off of it, and the doctor instructed him, I'm going to put you on this schedule, and within 5 days, life's going to be back to normal.
Yeah, right.
So,
That's what we, yeah.
and we
And
were
then what happened?
complete, well,
What
we
happened?
were completely oblivious of naive, I guess, for trusting the doctors, in a sense of, the doctors know what they're doing. They were trained to do this, and we were going to follow their instructions. It wasn't until after he was taken off of it on that, 5 day back to normal schedule, is when things were completely falling apart. And I started noticing and realizing the symptoms, and I said, this is not right. This can't be right. And I started researching. I started reading. I started looking for answers myself.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing Kevin, he is a very strong, determined person, always in control. He always makes everything better.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was in a position of not knowing what to do or afraid of what's happening, I became that person for him, the person for him that needed to step up and make everything okay. So on the research that I did the research, I did the reading, I looked and asked questions. I I started kind of comparing different information, and that
Mm-hmm.
is when I came to the notion of benzodiazepine withdrawal. And when I started reading into that, it made so much sense. What he was going through versus what I was reading, you matched,
Mm-hmm.
versus what he was going through and what the doctor was telling him it
What,
didn't make
what, yeah,
sense.
by the way, what was the doctor saying at that time?
Well, the doctor said, everything that you're going through is psychological. It's basically all in your head, and physically speaking, you're okay, you're safe. That's why I developed this 5 day method for you to be off of it, because once you're off of it, your body is okay, but your psychology, your dependency is all on you. So it didn't match, because obviously he wasn't not an addict. He
Right.
was not dependent on it, in the sense of, it's not like he did not take his medication as prescribed by the doctor strictly to the
Yes.
point of, to the T.
Mm-hmm.
And so all that, the more I read myself about this, I came across the Ashton manual, I came across, the benzo groups. We
Mm-hmm.
a plethora of YouTube channels where people were talking about, and then I joined groups. But throughout all of that, as I was educating myself on this subject, I did not want to alarm Kevin to what was happening to him, because he was already in such a state of loss or confusion and fear and all the symptoms that come with withdrawal,
Yeah.
benzo withdrawal. I didn't. I wanted to be wise enough to give him just enough information to keep him safe, to know he was going to be okay.
Yeah.
Symptom by symptom, or episode by episode. Each
Mm-hmm.
time you be in a wave, and we didn't even know what a wave was, a window was. We were in a tumble. I feel like we were in a dryer, in a
Yeah.
cycle that is just spinning really fast.
Yep.
And we didn't know what was coming at us. We didn't know what was happening to us. We tried to inquire with pharmacists, with doctors. Every time we would go to the professionals, we would feel defeated. We would feel like we were like he was a drug addict, and he was just looking for a fix.
Right.
When in reality, all of that he was going through was actually caused by professionals prescribing him all these medications.
Yep.
So it was I think one of the biggest things for me was realizing, okay, what he's going through is not something that he caused. It's not something that he started taking because he started experimenting with his medications, or taking more than he should have had.
Right.
Me knowing him and being married for many years, and knowing his personality, knowing what how he felt about medications of this sort. He's a probation officer, worked in law enforcement, social worker even. So he was around people that were already struggling with prescribed medications. He was one of those that would have to say, you have to take this medication, because if not, you're gonna have to go to jail, or you're gonna lose your kid.
Yep.
So he was aware of how he felt about prescribed medications, and how to take him, what it was for, and things like that. So once I started learning about what he was going through, it wasn't something that he caused himself, that he couldn't help what was done to him. I started educating myself and learning about what is happening, what others are dealing with. And it was such a different picture of what I was learning from the public, or the people that were actually going through this, versus what the literature, professional literature, shows and teaches. Commercials talk about it, professionals talk about it. Oh, that should have never been a thing. Benzos are not addictive. You can take them whenever you like.
But that's a really good point, Ziza, because I ask this question sometimes when I hear people trying to figure this out. How do you know who to listen to? Because these are online communities, these are YouTube channels, these are people that like me, that are normal, that work outside the system. And then you have a doctor telling you, no, you're mentally ill. Your son has very bad anxiety. He needs to take drugs, or, this is all in your head. Like, how do you know? Because that's two completely different worlds that are kind of in opposition a little bit. How did you
And
figure
to
that?
be honest with you, in my experience, I was in the medical field for years myself. I was in a surgical setting, but at the same time, of course, I experienced that, and I saw for myself the need for medications in a surgical setting. So if you need to be under anesthesia, you don't want to not be under anesthesia for a cesarean section.
Right.
You want to be able to so there's a place for medication.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that doctors should not think of themselves as all knowing. there's 8 billion individuals in the world. Not one of us is the same. You should be able to consider, for you particularly, this is not a medication that would work well for you. I had a stroke a few years back, and I take a medication daily that I have to take that prevents me from having another stroke. I don't want to take the medication, but I don't also want to have a stroke and not be able to speak or not be able to work. But in this instance, when it comes to the brain, in my opinion, I feel that there's a lot to learn still. There's a lot to understand as far as how our body heals, how our body works, how the brain operates the entire body. So for me, even though I listened to a professional that was trained in school to be able to learn a particular field in the field of neurology or in the field of psychiatry, a lot of that, I feel there's a lot of input from other fields that influence their learning. The pharmaceutical companies influence their learning, and it may put in what their agenda on what's being taught, how they're learning, how they speak. If you notice, all doctors kind of say the same thing, the same lingo, like they're all reading from the same book. But I feel like you have to research, you have to do your own research and learn and see what works for you and what doesn't. Why is this person that was one way before this medication is now this way after the medication?
Right.
So for me, a lot of research, a lot of learning. You, as a caregiver, you have to understand the person that you're caring for, who they are, who they were before, and realize that there's something wrong here. Why is it now that instead of this medication that was told to you that you were going to be better from it, you all of a sudden worse, completely different even than what you used to be?
Yeah.
So for caregivers, I always like to think of, number one, do a lot of research and learn what is it that is happening. First of all, why was it one way before? Of course, the people are different in all sorts of ways, from trauma to childhood upbringing and experiences in life, and why you started taking the medication to begin with.
Right.
And so that was the biggest thing for me, is understanding and learning, why is this happening? What happened between here and here? Why are we now in the situation? Why are these medications I have? So you have to do a lot of asking, but with caution, because you are having to care for somebody, and they are afraid, they're scared, they're hurting, they're confused on what's happening, and realizing, oh my gosh, why is this happening to me? And you have to sort of filter all the knowledge that you're getting from all your research, and kind of relate to them some sort of validation to what they're going through is a real thing, despite what doctors and professionals are saying. And also a compassionate tone to, you can't help what you're going through. I can imagine having your life turned upside down or stripped from you, and having to have that understanding in your mind that when you're reading, when you research and you realize what's happening, that you can give them some sort of a comfort to what they're dealing with.
Like, you're not crazy. You're going to get through this.
Yeah.
It's going to take some time, but we're going to make it. Yep. So tell me, before you answer this question, but how far off is Kevin now?
So nearing 2.5 years of stopping the benzo. So of course, throughout the first day that he stopped the benzo, he also had to stop taking other medications that were prescribed to him throughout the process, because the doctor took him off of the benzo within 5 days, but he didn't advise at all on taking him off of any of the other medications that he was taking. So we had to do our own research. We had to do our own research before we can. Now we know of people that I can go to in the benzo withdrawal community that would have a better advice to he should have gone, stop taking these medications. We came off of it quite fast, considering how the other medications that he was on.
Yeah.
But even stopping the benzo for 2.5 years, he still has lingering effects
Yeah.
of being on it.
Yeah. So tell me what, as a care from your perspective, like what was the process like for you? Because it's almost like I've even learned this. I have a caregiver support group that or support circle. I hate calling it a support group, a support circle that is all caregivers with people going through withdrawal. And I knew that they were struggling and like how hard it was, but I didn't really know to the extent until I sat with them for several hours and listened to them, and like talking to you and talking to other caregivers on individual sessions. And it's hard in a different way. Like you guys don't have the symptoms, but it's just as hard for you to watch your loved one suffering and there's not much you can do. You're hanging by a thread. Some of my caregivers are so burned out. It's like they've had to pay other people to come watch the loved one so they can go take a break because they just cannot keep up with it. It's like you're a live-in coach or you're a live-in practitioner trying to get them through this. So what has this been like for you?
Incredible. I can't even put into words. It is such a, to me, my relationship with Kevin is one of, we're best friends. We confide in each other, we depend on each other. He in a protective, supportive role, me on more of a, I'm a mom, I take care of everything on my end, but in a sense, for this period of time, I've lost him. I've lost that companionship. I've lost I'm almost like I'm a nurse and I'm not a wife.
Wow.
I don't have my husband with me. I don't have him taking care of things, taking the cars to be serviced, or having to go do something that he would have normally been the one doing it. Not all of a sudden I'm in the role of I have to take care of everything. It's scary, it's stressful. And then you grieve that loss. You grieve the loss of the person that you love, especially as spoiled as I have been by him, of the things that he would do for me. And, even in the husband and wife relationship, because now he's not able to do anything that he used to and wanted to, and he tried to come back, and just his loss, and it's seeing him go through that loss himself, the grief, the pain, just seeing him in such a fragile state. So as a caregiver, just seeing that unravel right before your eyes, just the change, the him being in such a fragile state, and you have no one to turn to, no one to talk to, no one that can say, I know exactly what you're going through. This is so tough. Of course, I have a loving family, and they would say, yeah, I know, I'm praying for you. How's everything? It's so tough. And then they'll go right back to, oh yeah, can you guys do this? I'm like,
They don't get it all the way.
You don't get what we're going through. And I couldn't expect them to, because me seeing him going through this on a daily basis, one-on-one, knowing him, even for me, it was a disbelief kind of thing of like, surely you can't, surely you're a little bit better today. Surely you're, it's gonna be, it's gonna be over soon.
They look normal and they sound normal and they can walk around the house. And so you're just like, what do you mean your whole body's on fire? Like you can't be, you're fine, but it's true. They are.
And you have to come to the point of course, you have to do a lot of reading, have to do a lot of, when you look at your person that you're caring for, and all of a sudden they're having a panic attack, but like you said, they're just standing in front of you and you can't see what's happening. You can only imagine the agony of, what can I do? What am I going to do? And you just have to put in your mind that I'm here for you. It's going to be okay. And there were days that were just like, I don't even know what to say. That would be of any help, of anything. Some days he just needed me to sit there with him, or there were things that we planned on doing. My daughter was giving birth to a grandchild an hour away, and I had to go to her to the hospital and be her support. But at the same time, the whole time that I was going through the process of being away from him while our daughter was giving birth, I had to rush back home because he was needing me. He was having a panic attack. And so you're a constant state of, with such levels of stress that you can't necessarily, you can't even explain to people. Right. I don't even know who you talk to that would understand what that is.
Yeah, because this is different. Yeah, this is different than other chronic illnesses where it's like way more time intensive, way more emotional, and just a ton of suffering, just so much suffering,
No,
and you're just watching it happen.
Suffering is beyond. I never dreamed of, dealing with something like that in the level. The biggest difficulty for me is me being with him and seeing him going through it and trying to relate that to others, to even for them to have a glimpse of an understanding of what it is that they're going through, and maybe have a little grasp of what it is. What is this all about? Mm-hmm. Try to speak out to others, stand up for them, for the what other people may think. Mm-hmm. Is this what is he not better now?
Yeah.
How long is he gonna take, or how much longer? Can you not come and can see me today because you need to do this or that? And you just look at others and you just think, well, I can see that you couldn't possibly understand what we're going through. Mm-hmm. And having to, you have to convince yourself of that too, that you're gonna be okay too. So you're going to soon this is gonna be over, and we're gonna be able to one day look back and think, what was that we went through?
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh,
it is extremely difficult, and I can imagine caregivers, for those that stick around, that are brave enough to hang in there with them while they're going through it.
Yeah, one said the other day, I just don't know how long this is going to last, and that's one of the worst parts, because you just don't know. It could be a month, a week, 6 months, 6 years. I don't know. And somehow you all pull together. I always say that to caregivers. I think I probably said it to you too, that this experience will either bring you closer together or tear you apart. And sometimes I feel like I shouldn't say that, because I can tell the couples that are like, this is not going to work. Like, I can't do this, but it's rare, actually. I've seen so many beautiful acts of love that bring me to tears, even just sitting on Zoom with couples and hearing how much love they have for each other, and how the husband or the wife will say, I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here until it's over. So has this brought you closer together as a family even?
Extremely. And I think you said one word that is extremely key to going through this type of suffering, because to me this is straight up suffering. It's in so many levels. Is love. If love is not there, no, you're not going to be able to make it, because love is what allows you to sustain that relationship. The compassion, the understanding, the selflessness, the putting others before you. So you're putting your husband or whoever you're caring for before any of your needs, because that person is in a moment in their life of unimaginable suffering. Mm-hmm. So it requires a lot of love, a lot of compassion, a lot of praying, a lot of reaching out to others. And he has brought us so much closer together. I feel like Kevin is if he was like this from the beginning of our relationship, I don't even know how much better he would have been, years later. But he's suffered through so much, and that brought him a level of closeness, with me, as far as intimacy and trust. Mm-hmm. So we have gone through it together, and he has really brought us to a raw knowing, a knowledge of each other, how I feel about him, and how he feels about me, and how we can count on each other, and know that I'm going to be here for him, and he's going to be here for me. And he has definitely been an experience like no other, as far as closeness, as far as getting to know each other for who they are in the most fragile stayed.
Yeah. And I think the other day, the last session we had with you, I said, you were sitting in the background. I said, Ziza, it sounds like you're getting your husband back because his sense of humor has started to come back. So what has that been like? Okay. And I want to be sensitive and say, there's gifts from this. I wish we hadn't gotten them, or I wish we hadn't gone through the suffering part, but there is something like a light at the end of the tunnel. There is hope at the end. So can you talk about that change between suffering and starting to see glimpses of your husband again?
Well, I like I said, I've always been spoiled by him as far as being a wife, but that is so good to have a glimpse of that, of um, him, winking at me a certain way, or just gives me chills just thinking about it. Just having that person that you love, that you wanted to be married to begin with, having him back, some of the silly jokes that you say, or some of the just how he looks at me, or how he views me in a sense of I am the only person that exists to him that he'd be looking for. Me, it's a kind of a selfish way to think of it, but I want to be the only one to
Yeah,
be
of
thought
course.
of.
Of course.
but
Of course.
but I that is I missed. I missed that we went on a little drive last night. It was such a beautiful night. The moon is huge, and we were holding hands in the car. It was just the two of us, and I just loved, just like we were dating,
Oh.
like we used, and it was just such a warmth in my heart just to have that back, that moment, while he still, may have a few symptoms here and there, just having the glimpse of we're getting there. We're gonna,
Getting there.
be completely back someday. But for now, those glimpses are so precious because it does give you a little oomph on your journey to keep going even more. And that is one of the things that, for all of those that are discouraged right now, that are struggling through the thick of it, I really offer you some encouragement to know that at one point you will have a glimpse or the whole thing back to where you can feel like you can keep going. And it is so, there's so many times, so many moments that we were in despair of thinking, is this it? Is he gone? Is he never gonna be back? Have I lost him, my husband, who he was? And now having those moments allow me to think, because you read about it and you hear people say, oh, you heal, you're gonna be okay. And of course, the person that's suffering, going through it, they can imagine any of that. They can imagine possibly thinking you'll heal, or it's gonna go away one day, or you're gonna be better. All they can think of, I cannot stand another second of the suffering. But for us, we can have that perspective and keep on reassuring them as they're going through their journey, because of course, we're not the ones suffering through what they're going through exactly, but in a way also suffering with them. But having these glimpses, these moments allow you to kind of refresh, recharge, and think we're gonna keep going because this is gonna get better, and this is keep getting better. So I can completely understand as a caregiver what you may be going through at the moment, the thick of it, the loneliness of it, because you're having to care, feel like you're caring for that person yourself, because no one else understands what they're going through, and you have to be the only one that stands up for them, that can help them through it. So keep at it. Just don't give up. Don't give up. Keep at it, one day at a time, one moment at a time, one panic or anxiety attack at a time, to make through the other side.
I really like that though. That's a really good point because I think I do the same thing, is that you hold the perspective of you are going to get through this, you are healing, this is the end goal, you will get there. And it's not that you don't see the suffering in the moment, but it's like you hold both at the same time to be true. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I think that's a really important point, that you are the one holding the reality. You're the one with the caregiver is. the one with the healthy nervous system, the one that can think rationally, the one that can do things around the house to help the person get through it, but the one to hold the perspective of this is the process. We are going to get through it. There is a path. There's other people that went before you, and you have to keep repeating that as reassurance and
Over and
validation
over.
over and
Yeah.
over. But that this is where we're going, and no, all of your thoughts are not true. That this is permanent and you're going to have to go back
Yeah.
on all that stuff. No, we're
Yeah.
going to stay here, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's a super important point.
A lot of validation to what they're dealing with, as irrational as it may be to you, to them is a reality. In their mind is a reality. Of course, the suffering is a real thing. But knowing that they're not crazy, and you are right here with them, and a lot of validation, but a lot of compassion to let them go through the moment where what he or she says is completely irrational, completely bonkers, and they'll say lots of things that are completely off color, or even hurtful sometimes. But you have to be in a frame of mind of, you are going to get through it with them as they're going through this complete darkness in their life. You're not in the darkness like they are, but you have to be that light for them and say, don't even pay attention to those moments. Don't pay attention to the rambling. Don't pay attention to the angry outbursts. Don't pay attention, because that person is not them at that moment. You know, whatever episode, whatever angry outburst, or whatever fear moment, you know, where they feel fragile, where they're scared, and you don't even recognize what they're saying or how they're behaving. You just have to be their guiding
anchor.
light.
Yeah,
Their
like you
anchor
keep
to
them.
help them through that moment. And of course, honestly, when you're dealing with somebody, the burnout is a real thing, because they'll say things that are pretty hurtful. They'll say things that they don't mean to. It's not them saying it, but nonetheless, it comes out of their mouth. And for all intents and purposes, it's them saying it.
Yep.
But you have to come to your senses and realize this is not them saying that.
No.
This is I call it your benzo brain. This is a benzo brain talking.
Exactly.
Just let them ramble, let them talk.
They do it to me too, and I'll just say, go ahead. Like, I know I'm not talking to you. I know I'm talking to your benzo brain. I get it. I've had it myself, so I recognize it in others, but I've had people, caregivers, say, like, they want me to move out. They said I'm making them worse. They want me to stay out of the room, and then 5 minutes later, like, wait, come back. Like, it's very confusing. They sound like totally nuts.
They're
sometimes.
so confused. That gives you a picture of what it is that they're going through. It's just this complete insanity. But at the same time, one of the things that Kevin kind of talked to me through, as he was kind of teaching me as he was going through it, but going through one of the moments, the waves that he was going through, he was just rambling some really heavy things, and he was, afterwards, he said, you know what, you just let me go through this moment, this wave, this phase, and when I come to my senses, I'll realize, oh my gosh, I don't even know what I said, or I'm so sorry for saying these things. I'm so sorry for putting you through it. And that, like he says, that is this real sense of guilt that's so overwhelming, that comes on top of everything else that they're dealing with. So in having to learn and think, okay, let them be, let them do what they need to do, as long as they know that I'll be right there in the corner waiting for them to be okay. And
wait till you come out of it and you have a little
just
bit
like
more
when somebody
sanity.
has a seizure, when you have a seizure, they're having their seizure, you can't do anything, but you're right there holding their hand, or making sure their head doesn't get hit, or bite their tongue, or you bite your tongue so you don't say things back. So
yes, exactly. Oh my gosh. So I want to talk about this subject carefully, obviously, because we're going to be on YouTube. So there's a transcript and they read everything that you say. I think somehow, I don't know, I don't want to sound paranoid, but the subject of suicidal thoughts, like, it's super common, especially some of the more severe cases of benzo withdrawal. Suicidal ideation is part of it. So I know Kevin suffered from it. So how did you, well, let me say one more thing. We just had like a very, very, like, come to Jesus kind of talk about it in our caregiver circle the other day. And it's just like such a tricky thing because it's like deep down, the person doesn't want to die. They just cannot suffer like this. However, just the constant thinking about death is like part of this experience for whatever reason. We don't understand why. So how did you navigate that with such a severe symptom?
The first time that ever came out, as far as a subject or a thing spoken, the first time that I heard him say that, it was immediately a connection of, oh my gosh, this medication made you say that. So at the moment, I didn't consider necessarily an action, a possible action. Afterwards, later after the benzo withdrawal and the length of suffering that he was going through, I knew that he didn't want to die, but at the same time, he couldn't stand another second of that suffering.
Yeah.
And as a caregiver, obviously, I don't want him to die. I don't want to be without him. I don't want him to, possibly think of the ways of killing himself or committed suicide. But at the same time, you have to be on a position of comfort to where you can help them, guide them through that process. Because I cannot imagine, I can possibly pretend that I do understand what that moment is like, what that feels like. But because I don't understand that, it also allows me to not judge him or whoever you're dealing with or helping with of what that feels like. Pretend that, dismiss it or say that, I don't mean that. Or it's a serious moment in their mind of what they're going through. The suffering is so unimaginable.
Yeah. So
there were times that I was really concerned, and I stayed home with him for that moment. There was a time that he felt like he just couldn't stand it anymore, and I had to leave work and go home.
Yeah.
Because of a concern of, actually, do I have a real concern here? Do I have a real problem here this time? Is this time really something that I need to consider staying by his side 24 hours a day? Because you kind of have to judge by your relationship with that person, what that means to them and how serious they are on this action, the level of suffering. Because there are instances that you may need to have a person there aside from you, or maybe speak to somebody that knows more about it. Don't pretend that you got this. If it's something that you feel it's more important than, more serious or severe than what you are used to, as far as your relationship, as far as talking them down, as far as talking some peace and some comforting words and holding their hands. There are times that you may be a little bit more out of what you can handle.
That's a good point, because I like to tell people you have to create the safety that you think you need from a hospital at home, which is very controversial to say, but the caregivers will admit it too, that if I take my loved one to a hospital who doesn't understand deprescribing and doesn't understand benzo withdrawal and doesn't understand the complexity of the situation, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to put him back on meds. And if they put my loved one back on meds, they will surely do the S word. And then what do we have? So that's a very controversial point. It's like we're taught to go seek services for that, and in this situation, the services could actually make it worse, not better.
Exactly. And that has been our situation, is think, what kind of help am I going to get if I ask for help? What is the advice? What are they going to tell me that would be beneficial for this person going through withdrawal? Because you're right, if they started on this situation to begin with from the medications they were prescribed in a hospital setting that way, you certainly don't want to go back to that, because that is not what's beneficial to them, to their body, to the withdrawal that they're dealing with, and the symptoms that they're maybe suffering from. So there's a lot of caution, a lot of I think that the more you research, the more you look into this, at this point of his benzo withdrawal, life that he's been going through, I have come to have a better understanding, but also get to know people that you can go to when
Talk to,
they
yeah,
are
that work in this field that do understand it, like the
they are
psychiatrists. Like there's a few psychiatrists that we work with, and I'd be remiss without saying this, that some cases, like if Kevin was cold turkeyed and 5 days later he's in acute withdrawal, does he need to be reinstated? That's a choice that the family makes. That's a choice that the person
exactly.
suffering makes. And yes, at that time, a hospital could help you, or an emergency room, or a doctor with, when you're informed on what are my
Mhm.
options here, what kind of help do I think I need, what would be helpful to me right now. So there's cases like that. But you should know all of the options and all of the, to me, the akathisia cases are the ones that are in most danger zone, because it's like they don't see the akathisia, and those people are in such a hypersensitive situation. If they get put on a bunch of drugs, that can make it worse. Not to say it will, I don't know, but it's just a very careful decision
Yeah.
that
And we can
you
speak from experience on that one. Um, but and you're absolutely right. When it comes to you have to know the person that you're caring for.
yeah,
What are their risks? What are their sensitivities? What are their situations from moment to moment on that where you would be more at risk. Um, and definitely a lot of times, less words are better than too many words, and just kind of just knowing that there is somebody there with them that will
yeah,
be by their side, that will see them through that cloud of desperation and despair, and just constantly speaking calming words and affirming words, and allowing them to know that they're not alone, because going through what they're going through, I just cannot imagine. Especially, from Kevin in his situation, is that a person that was who he was, through all the adrenaline, through all the personality that he is, and
Mhm.
all the who he was, and to come to a point where he feels that suicide would have been an option from the suffering that he was going through. You have to come to senses of, oh my gosh, this is so not Kevin.
Yes,
This is so not
the person I
him
married.
wanting
Yeah,
to die. He just
right.
he just doesn't want to go through this suffering any longer, and all the
Mhm.
others that are going through this. So it is very sensitive. You can't necessarily say do this or do that for sure, because each person is different, they
Yeah,
respond differently.
yeah,
But for you as a caregiver, I think it's important to know what that person needs at the moment. Calmness, or they need maybe a touching hand. Make sure they're calming their central nervous system. With that touch, or they just need somebody to sit there in a dark room with them. There's not one way per se, but I guess the main thing is to know that they're not alone. They're not physically,
yeah,
somebody is there with them that cares and knows them.
right.
I think makes a big difference.
Yeah, and that's one last point about this subject is when you say I have to get to know the person and know what they need at any given moment, but it really is like you're riding this wave. Like the suicidal ideation will get really strong, and then you say some calming words, you hold them. I've seen people bear hug, or let's take a walk, or let's get some cold water for your face, or whatever. Sometimes it's so extreme, it's like you're sitting on them, like whatever you have to do to pass the moment. But you start to see this pattern where it will
Yeah,
come up like a wave, and then it goes down, and you
yeah,
just got to keep riding those waves and keep them as safe as you can while they're experiencing that severe part. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So two more subjects, and we're going to try to end in the next 5 minutes. So, so one subject, quickly, briefly, if you can, how did you avoid burnout, or what did you do to take care of yourself in the hardest times?
To me, the most important thing was, just prayer. I would here and there go to the store, look around. Um, we were busy with, we were fostering some. We were kids in school. Distraction, find little things that you can distract yourself with. But mostly prayer on my end. Just kind of, having calming songs or music that you enjoy, things that are enjoyable to you.
Mm-hmm.
Music, looking at water, or people that can take a little walk.
Mm-hmm.
Things that are enjoyable for you is what helped me, because you have to keep going. You have to keep helping. You have to keep carrying it, for that person. So it's not that you avoid burnout. You're gonna be burnt out, but it's just that you have to kind of work through that by helping yourself, by bringing yourself a little joy on things that are enjoyable to you. A piece of chocolate, or listening to the music, or watching a movie. Watching some videos, or looking at pictures that remind you of how that person used to be, and you're gonna go be back to that, so you're looking forward to that again. So
I love
that's
it.
one of the things
Perfect.
that you try to do. You're gonna be
Well,
burnt out, but
it's
you
like
gotta
take
get
yourself out of it for a minute.
for
Just
a minute.
even if you sit in the toilet and just have like 2 minutes to yourself, like
Yes.
every moment you can, pull yourself out of the suffering if possible, so that you can keep going, because they need you. It's the worst part.
Yeah.
You can't. Oh, okay. So last question. How I always like to end on hope. What hope can you bring to sufferers, and what hope can you bring to caregivers and spouses that are going through
I
this
know
right
that everybody hears that. We were hearing that whenever, or read that whenever we first started going through this. I always like to say this, it's a healing. The healing process is a process. It does take time. If somebody cut an arm off, if you could grow it back, it wouldn't grow back instantly. You have to slowly, grow back. So I feel like it's give yourself some grace to know that, yes, you're going through this. Yes, it's difficult, for both the caregiver and the person suffering. But there's nothing better than, while you're going through this process, understand that you're not going to stay the same. The healing, even minimal, is happening. And it's so difficult to imagine the reality of that, or imagine that it would be a thing, but it will happen. It has to, time has to take place, and you have to understand that with anything else, we have to wait. We live in a culture now that everything's so instant. Everything is so now, you get it now, everything's so fast. You order something one day, it's in your door the next day. It's not the same with this. And through this process, you will learn so much about yourself. You'll learn so much about the person that you're caring for, the person that's caring for you. And you realize, wow, I can imagine that somebody could stick by my side going through this, even if when I couldn't even care for myself, or even love myself. So there's a lot to be learned. So one of the things that I want to encourage you to keep trying is that practice that grace towards yourself, on realizing you're not always going to be perfect. You're not always going to say the right thing. You're not always going to be strong. There are times that you're just not going to say the right thing, and you're just going to collapse, and you're just going to have to walk out, and that's okay. Give yourself permission to be human, to not have the right words to say every time. And the person that's suffering, my heart goes out to you. I so much understand that no one can grasp the level, the depth of your suffering. But I want to encourage you that suffering will not last forever, and one day you'll be able to look back and see that suffering brought you a lot of purpose, and it brought you a lot of growth, and you became a better person after all that was done.
Thank you so much, Ziza. It's beautiful. All right.
Thank you, Angie.
Is there any last thoughts that you have? Anything you want to share? Any last things before we hang up?
I want to say how thankful we are in the Benzo community to have you, for your wisdom, for your funny, and you ground us to what's happening, the realities of everything. I wish there were many more people like you that can relate, that can be real over what's happening, and kind of a bridge to connect others that are also suffering, caregivers and sufferers alike. So thank you for all you do. Thank you for all your wisdom and your patience, and you're just precious. I lost your sound there, Angie.
Sorry. Right
That's
at
okay.
when I'm saying really important. Ugh. No, I'm just saying, like, thank you for letting me witness your healing process and the love that you all have for each other. I was thinking when you were talking earlier that love is the antidote for this suffering. So thank you for loving Kevin.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We'll see you next week. Again, please subscribe if you're on YouTube. Please like the page if you're on Facebook, blah, 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 the business stuff. Okay. See you later. Thank you, Ziza.
Thank you, Angie.